The head of the presidential office, Andriy Yermak, has resigned, and there will be a personnel shakeup within the office itself. President Zelensky announced this in his special address. The decree on Yermak's dismissal has already been published on the president's website. Zelensky thanked Yermak for his patriotic stance during the negotiation process, but added that he agreed to his dismissal to avoid rumors and speculation. Ukraine will be represented in negotiations with the United States on the peace agreement by the Chief of the General Staff, the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, as well as officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Intelligence, Zelensky said.
Head of the office, Andriy Yermak, has submitted his resignation. I am grateful to Andriy for always representing Ukraine's position in the negotiation track exactly as it should be. It was always a patriotic stance. But I want to make sure there are no rumors or speculation regarding the new head of the office. Tomorrow I will hold consultations with those who may head this institution.
The resignation was preceded by searches conducted by NABU and SAP at Andriy Yermak's home this morning. According to Ukrainian media, these searches took place as part of Operation Midas, which concerns corruption in the energy sector. According to the investigation, participants in the scheme managed to launder $100 million. At the beginning of November, NABU made public recordings of conversations between the suspects using code names. It is suspected that businessmen Timur Mindic and Oleksandr Zuckerman are involved in the case. They have been declared wanted. Mindic managed to leave the territory of Ukraine. A few hours before the searches, Zuckerman had already left back in October. 2 drones struck critical infrastructure in Sumy with precision. A fire broke out. A man was injured. He was taken to the hospital in serious condition. 2 people were killed as a result of shelling in the Dnipropetrovsk region. 2 more were injured. The enemy struck Sinelnikivsky district with bombs and drones. A lyceum caught fire. 1 house was completely destroyed and 5 more were damaged. The Nikopol district came under fire from artillery and FPV drones. An enterprise and a private house were damaged. 13 people were injured in the Kherson region. The Russians directed drones at homes in Kumishany, Priozerne and Kherson. 2 women and 3 men were wounded. 3 more civilians were injured as a result of artillery shelling of the regional center, including an 18-year-old young man. 5 residents of Berislav, Bilozerka, Chornobaivka and Blahovishchenske required medical assistance. In Sloviansk, Donetsk region, the enemy struck the private sector, injuring a local resident. 6 houses, an administrative building and vehicles were damaged. There is also an injured person in Kostiantinivka. In Drushkivka, the Russians damaged about a dozen private houses and broke a gas pipeline. The enemy struck nearly 500 times at 20 settlements in Zaporizhzhia. No people were injured, but outbuildings, houses and equipment were damaged. Evacuation under fire. From the Polohi district in Zaporizhzhia, community officers evacuated a married couple, a 57-year-old man and a 64-year-old woman. According to them, the last few days have been turned into hell by the Russians. The shelling became more frequent, but since the village itself was practically destroyed, they decided to leave. Police officers also evacuated 2 more large families from Yurivka. 1 family has 6 children, the other has 3. The families were brought to a transit hub where they were met by social services and volunteers. Fierce fighting is taking place in Pokrovsk. In the northern outskirts of the city, Ukrainian fighters are clearing out enemy saboteurs. Special operations forces have shown how they set up ambushes along the routes used by the Russians. The enemy tried to take up positions in one of the apartment buildings, but 3 Russians were eliminated as they approached the shelter. A 4th tried to escape and shoot down the Ukrainian reconnaissance drone with small arms, but the occupier was found and neutralized. Our successes in the northern part of Pokrovsk. The enemy's advance toward Hryshin was stopped, but the Russians continue to tighten the encirclement of Mirnohrad. There have already been recorded attempts by isolated enemy groups to infiltrate the city. So far, they have been unsuccessful. It was also possible to stabilize the situation around Huliepol, which the enemy is also trying to occupy. Vovchansk is also holding on. The Russians have repeatedly reported capturing the city. After a year and a half of relentless attacks, Russian terrorists have turned the city into ruins. No factories, no hospitals, no apartment buildings remain. The fighters of the 57th Brigade and adjacent units are holding their positions. In total, 247 combat engagements were recorded over the past day. The Ukrainian Defense Forces struck the Saratov oil refinery. Local residents filmed a series of explosions after which a fire broke out. The Russian enterprise produces more than 20 types of petroleum products for the needs of the Russian occupation army. In addition, a storage site for strike drones at the Saki airfield in temporarily occupied Crimea was hit. Several air defense targets were also destroyed, including Pantsir and Tor systems. After suppressing the enemy's air defense systems, a hangar storing enemy Orion and four-post drones was destroyed. The command and control tower of the enemy, as well as a military truck, were also hit by the defense forces. In addition, areas where enemy personnel were concentrated and fuel and lubricant depots in the occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk regions were struck. Belgium will hinder the peace agreement. It has found a new reason to block the EU's plan to transfer Russian assets to Ukraine. Prime Minister of the country, Bart de Wever, sent letters with the relevant arguments to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. In the document, the politician warned that a hasty adoption of the loan scheme under reparations could have side effects. The EU would in effect block the path to a potential peace agreement. In de Wever's opinion, this scheme is fundamentally wrong, because historically during wartime frozen assets have never been used. Usually decisions regarding them were made only after the war as part of reparations from the losing side. Currently, about 185 billion euros of Russian assets are frozen in Belgium, of which 140 billion are planned to be transferred to Ukraine. Discussions about the transfer have been ongoing since October, but so far the leaders have not been able to reach an agreement. Official Brussels is concerned about financial and legal risks. They say that the Kremlin could later prosecute them for this. That is why they are asking for guarantees from other EU members. Meanwhile, Politico, citing its own sources, reports that the Belgian government is allegedly withholding full information about Russian assets and is using them for tax revenues in its own budget. And this is a violation of an international obligation that requires them to disclose information about what they are doing with these funds. In an exclusive interview for TSN, the head of European diplomacy, Kaja Kallas, said that they are preparing a legal proposal to reassure the Belgian authorities and allow the use of Russian assets next year. Final approval is expected at the EU summit on December 18th through 19th.
Work on the loan for reparations is ongoing. The Commission has proposed documents with various options presenting different approaches, but undoubtedly the loan for reparations is the most viable option. To move forward and truly finance the needs that Ukraine has? Of course, this requires thorough work at the legislative level to truly resolve all legal issues and risks, as well as ensuring that Belgium, which is the largest holder of these assets, can cover the risks and receive solidarity support in their distribution.
Meanwhile, as Russia spends its resources on the war in Ukraine, its space technologies are plunging into the abyss. At Baikonur, the launch pad for spacecraft has been destroyed. This is the only place where, since Soviet times, manned missions to the International Space Station have been launched. Everything happened at the moment of the launch of the Soyuz MS-28 spacecraft for unknown reasons. The service cabin collapsed there. The structure fell onto the launch pad at Roscosmos. The incident is not being commented on. However, some experts say that, in fact, from this day on, Russia has lost the ability to send people into space, something that hasn't happened since 1961. Aerial reconnaissance and interception of enemy drones. The National Guard members of the Helios drone unit are honing their skills during rotation, attacking moving targets and learning to counter enemy drones. See how drone operators work in the report by TSN correspondent Tetiana Komic.
In this bus, according to the training scenario, are Russian mercenaries, a swift FPV drone attack, and meanwhile, another group of soldiers brings down an enemy drone with an anti-drone rifle.
Can we land it in the field? Attention, the drone is on the ground.
And this drone is taken off to scout whether the enemy is hiding in the ruins, because the fighters of the Helios unit spotted an enemy drone in the sky.
We saw such a custom-made drone. We know exactly where it is. And this signal can be tracked.
While one is setting up the equipment, others are installing the antenna to boost the connection.
We raise the antenna and it turns out that we open up a new radio horizon for ourselves, which is more stable. This way we can fly further and strike the enemy.
The enemy tries to hide among the bushes and slip into buildings. The operator doesn't take his eyes off the monitor.
This room, the second room, Sometimes we had to search for such occupants, detect movement, and respond.
The Helios UAV unit was formed 2 years ago. His fighters fought near POKROVSK and in the Zaporizhzhia region, and only recently returned for rotation. Drones are rapidly improving, says the unit's spokesperson, so operators need to constantly hone their skills. That's why these trainings were organized.
We tried to make it as close as possible to the realities, to the events that are happening at the front, which our guys face every day.
Before the war, the fighter with the call sign Baika 26 installed solar panels. On the second day of the full-scale invasion, he arrived at the military unit.
We were on duty guarding strategic sites and then gradually started getting involved with these drones, receiving them, tinkering with them, trying them out.
During his time working with drones, the fighter says he has fought both in forests and on open plains. He admits that working in open terrain is much more difficult because there is nowhere for a drone operator to hide. There's nowhere to take cover.
We were in the Donetsk direction, stationed in the forest. I wouldn't say it was super safe there. It's more of an illusion of safety or something like that. In Zaporizhzhia, it was a bit tougher because we were holding the defense out in the fields.
After all the trials, Baika says he's happy to see his family, but his thoughts are constantly with his comrades who are now near Pokrovsk. Tetiana Komic, Anton Onishchuk, Volunteers, and 1+1 Marathon United News.
The final autumn weekend in Ukraine will be moderately warm. The air temperature will fluctuate between +4 and +8 degrees. In the south, it will be even warmer, up to +13. Light rain is possible on Saturday in the north of Ukraine and on Sunday in the southern part. In Kyiv, on November 29th, there will be occasional rain, and on the 30th, no precipitation is expected. Tomorrow it will be +8 and on Sunday +6 degrees. Next week, the calendar winter begins. However, in December, it will be unusually warm. You shouldn't count on snow just yet, according to meteorologists' forecasts.